Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Ripple Effect podcast. I am super excited for this episode because this is actually proof that ripples that start many, many years ago can come back to you in ways that you can't imagine. I am so excited to introduce you to Lisa Cox, who is a good friend of mine who knew me when I was a baby entrepreneur. And she had a big hand in kicking me in the butt to go forward and do some of the things that I've been able to accomplish. And so I'm super excited for y'all to meet her and to hear from her because she is a bona fide Rippler. Lisa, thanks for joining the Ripple Effect podcast.
Thanks, Steve. It's an honor for me to be here. I really am not quite sure why you asked, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to get to see your face and get to visit with you.
Well, I asked because you have been one of the most influential people in my life. You are just one of you're not only nice and just totally sincere, but you cut through the BS and just, had a way of slapping me upside the head to like, hey, this is what you need to be doing. This is how you need to be focused. And you and I met many, many years ago when I first volunteered for Junior Achievement. You were living in Austin. I was living in Austin, and I became what was the actual official title? I was a classroom
Volunteer.
Yeah.
Volunteer.
Okay.
Yeah, the classroom volunteer.
You led me down the path of Junior Achievement, which I had a lot of admiration for that program. Got to meet some great teachers, and to this day, I have to say some of the kids that were in those classes that I got an opportunity to come into once or twice a month was. I still see them out and about. They look way different than they did back then, but they'll come and be like, Mr. Harper, I remember you. You're our Junior Achievement guy. It's like, yeah. So you had no idea what an influence you had at that time in my life because I was such a really shy, introverted entrepreneur. It really helped me kind of come into my own.
Well, I appreciate the compliments. I'm not sure about the nice part, but you are right that I do have a tendency to kick people in the backside and say, come on, you can do this, particularly when you can see the potential. And I knew you had that potential to be able to make a difference and impact the young people that you were going to be meeting with and volunteering in their classroom. And I know we started out maybe with elementary and that wasn't the best place for you, but you moved into high school and it turned out to be absolutely the best place in the world for you to be. And the impact that you had, and you and I've had this conversation, that you never really know. I had no idea that you were going to come back, and it's been many years, that you were going to come back and say, Lisa, you had this impact. You never know. If you're the person that's just doing what it is they do, you don't know that. And if you're the person that's receiving that, you really don't know until years later. Just like those high school kids had no idea. They just thought you were a man coming in talking to them, and they weren't having to take a test, and they were getting to do something fun.
Yep.
So it was okay for you to come in. But they, now years later, they think back on, I had that economics class with Miss Dobbs, and there was this guy who came in and he told us these things. They may not remember your name. Some of them do. But they remember some of the most important pieces and nuggets that you gave them when they were seniors in high school. And that's something that is so important. I do not work for Junior Achievement anymore, but I am a strong advocate and believer and champion for them. And I'm a strong champion for any time that an adult goes into a school and has an impact on young people, whether that's reading at the elementary level or whether it's doing Junior Achievement at the middle and high school level. It doesn't really matter so long as you're making an impact and being another positive role model for students.
Yeah, it's so necessary, especially now, right? But back then, I could see the power of the program, and I was sort of I really had came full circle doing Junior Achievement because I was part of DECA when I was in high school, and it was so instrumental in guiding me and directing me towards entrepreneurship, and which was really funny because I talked to people who are like, I knew you in high school, I could never see you do what you do now, and you were just kind of really just off to your own, and when you got into DECA, you really kind of found this second gear, right? This next gear, and leadership became, a big factor of what I was trying to do. I became an officer with DECA. I went on to do a lot of things through their programs, both at the district, state, and national level. And it gave me a voice. And what I found when I first moved to Texas was DECA wasn't as strong, and it wasn't
Mhm.
the program wasn't as well thought of as it had been from where I was from in New Mexico. And so I was really disappointed because I wanted to give back the experience that I had being a young entrepreneur. I felt like I had something to give, and that I wasn't so old that I, would just
Right.
be another old dude coming into the classroom to talk about business. And what I found when you and I met, and we can, I think you had a coordinator that met me at an event and said, you ought to try this. And I said, okay. And then, the first time I went, you were like, I don't understand why you don't think you're doing a good job. The teachers love you, the kids like you. And you're right. I started at elementary, and it was a little different program because I think there was a switch on the teacher. And, I was like feeling super uncertain because now I'm in a classroom of kids that were not really listening to their substitute that was coming in. I think that the teacher at the time was having a baby or something.
That's
And
never a good situation. I
no, it wasn't a
apologize
good
for that.
situation. You're like, well, let's try high school. I'm like, oh God, are you kidding me? This is going to be freaky. But I just really loved it. And the kids were at an age where they could see themselves potentially going in and owning their own business. And there were, of course, lots of questions. What kind of car did you drive? What kind of house do
Mhm.
you have? And all those
How much money do you
expectations.
make?
Yeah, exactly. You told me, be aware that
I
that's going to
did.
be the first question, and
I
it
did.
was the first question I
That's
got
right.
when I went into that class. And what I realized though was that these kids were just hungry for anybody to really come in and pay attention to them, and really believe in them. And that's what I loved about the Junior Achievement Program. And you were a part of Junior Achievement for a long time, but maybe for my audience that doesn't maybe know what Junior Achievement is, can you give us just kind of a high level overview of what it was that you were doing then, and sort of where it led you in your career path?
Well, Junior Achievement is a volunteer-based organization that's focus is around economics, personal finance, entrepreneurship, and really preparing students for their future. There are Junior Achievement offices all across the country, and if that's something that you're interested in, then I certainly, if your audience is interested in, I
Nice.
certainly encourage you to look up the local office and get involved. They have all the materials. You didn't have to create anything. You have to add your experiences,
Yep.
but you didn't have to create anything. And since I left Junior Achievement about 7 years ago, excuse me, they've really evolved, and COVID, they were evolving, and then COVID forced them to evolve. So
Yeah.
there are online opportunities, which are wonderful and great. Obviously, in person, in front of kids, is the best way to be able to have an impact.
Yep.
But you can do that, virtually. And Junior Achievement has created online programs, but everything is created for you. You don't have to do anything again other than add your experiences, and that's what students are looking for. They're looking for real world, real life experiences. And so, I encourage anyone to do something like that. I have since, because of my 20 plus years, more than 20 years with Junior Achievement, I have since moved into a role of working for one specific school district, and that's the Garland Independent School District, which is in the Dallas area, Dallas, Texas. And
Yep.
um, so I'm now running their education foundation and still doing some of those similar things, but only for one school district instead of multiple school districts. And so our focus is to provide, within the foundation that I currently run, is to provide financial resources to our teachers for innovative, creative materials and programs that the district's budget may not allow for. And even through that, I continue to have people say, well, how can I, in companies, well, how can I volunteer? How can
Yep.
we make an impact? We want to support you financially, but we'd like to be able to become a partner with the district. And so we have resources and ways in which we can do that. And as I said earlier, obviously I'm an advocate for education. I'm an advocate for making an impact. And it all really goes to your concept of the ripple effect, that it starts or it can start at a very young age
Yep.
of making an impact. And that ripple will continue, because what you and I have done over a lot of years, I'll, uh, I'll age you and me, so I'll just leave it at that. But, you had an impact at a high school level for those kids those kids have now gone on, and things that you gave them, they have used in their lives, in their professional lives, in their personal lives. I evidently had some type of impact on you. You have, and as I told you early on, you need to get better influences in your life.
No.
But you have gone on to make an impact, and I guess I have, just doing what I do.
Yeah.
And I say that all the time, just doing what I do, and so we all have the opportunity
Yep.
to make an impact. It may be to one person. It may be to a classroom of kids. It may be to 3 or 4 kids. It may be to those that you work with, that if you're a leader and a manager, it may be those that you are managing currently, that you have to look at their different personalities
Yeah.
and what really motivates them, so that you can then encourage them. Because you took my straightforward, you know, encouragement. I'm gonna go with encouragement. You're my straightforward
Encouragement.
encouragement. Yeah. You went with that motivated you, but it may not
Yeah.
motivate everybody else. And so you have to figure out what works. And I personally believe that we're all a ripple, that
Yeah.
everything we do is, and it can be a positive, and it certainly can be a negative.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said, the thing that I think is most important is when you think about giving back, schools are desperate for volunteers at any level.
Mhm.
And it can be scary and it can be intimidating. Just in the last several years, right? School dynamics have changed pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that I think is probably the greatest gift is I had somebody, I think I told you, I've run into so many kids over the years, several that went on to be entrepreneurs. And one person stopped me at a mall one time and just told me what a big impact that I had on them and how much they enjoyed, the junior achievement experience, and that I actually gave them encouragement, past graduation. They stayed in
Mhm.
contact with me, and I said, the one thing that this person said was, you told me that you believed in me. And I was in a position where I didn't have a lot of people that told me that. I have my teachers, and teachers believed in me, but didn't really, beyond school, I didn't have a whole lot of positive outside influence. And when you think of just the impact, like what you're doing with your current work, what the volunteers do for junior achievement, or, what any of these programs that are actually partnering with your local school districts are doing, it's about making that impact. And you have no idea what a huge takeaway these kids have just by you willing to volunteer and dedicate some time and share some experience and just be there for them. It's pretty amazing as to how impactful that can be, not only in the moment, but how it can come back to you in years later. And so that's been
And
probably the greatest reward.
you made a point that you told that young person that you believed in them. And it really doesn't matter what socioeconomic background
Yeah.
young people come from. They can come from the most affluent background, or they can come from a very impoverished background. It doesn't matter. There are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of young people who never hear, "I believe in you."
Yeah.
Does not matter, again, what their socioeconomic background is, that they never hear, "I believe in you, and I
Yeah.
believe that you can do this. You can do anything you choose to do." But you can't just say the words. You have to give them some specific examples, or
Yeah.
give them tools that will help them, that they can see and visualize in their minds. And so it's really important, and young people need that,
Absolutely.
that they absolutely need it. And I know that there are people in your audience that were like you, shy, um, or not as outgoing
Yeah.
as you are now, or I may be. And I think we're all a little bit introverted in some ways. I mean, even all of my personality tests will tell you that's not true, but but
But it is. It's true.
I think it's true.
Yeah.
You just have to find what you're passionate about.
Agreed.
And you have to care about people. And I think that's critically important today. And we hear it over and over. And it all starts at home, as they say, and it starts in your communities. It starts in your home. It starts in your church. It starts
Yep.
in your school districts, in your local school, one closest to you in your neighborhood, whatever that might look like. But find something that means something to you. And again, it may not be education, it may be other organizations,
Yep.
but you can have a real impact. And it may be just in your job.
Yep.
Again, that's very important. And, I think it's critical that we help those that we work with every day, and that we find ways to connect with them every day. And again, put aside all of your whatever it is. And I don't want to go down that road, but
Yeah.
put it all aside and think about what's best in the moment, what's best for your company, what's best for your organization, what's best for your family, whatever that is for your community. Make that your priority.
Absolutely.
And it's hard. It's hard, but and you talked about coaching, and really it is coaching. A lot of it is
Yeah.
coaching. I don't know. Maybe that was my husband was a high school football coach and high school athletic director over a lot of sports, and that's what he did literally until almost the day he died.
Yeah.
He was coaching young people. Some of his former players would come see him. I would hear him in there in the
Yeah.
bedroom when he was bedridden, talking to him, and he'd be coaching them, still watching
Yeah.
basketball. And the young lady that was his caregiver, he was coached. She was young. She was 24. He was coaching her.
Yeah.
And he coached anybody that walked through the door or got in his orbit. And so I guess that was our life's work. I guess
Yeah.
it, is important. But everybody has a ripple.
Yeah.
Somehow you have a ripple. And I'm so impressed with you that you found a way to encapsulate that and to share it with others. I think it's a critical, important thing that we all need to think about and understand what our ripple and what our influence is.
Yeah, that's well said. And you and your husband, I know, just made such a difference to all the kids that you've gone and encountered through life, and just through the programs that you've been involved with, and obviously through his coaching. That's legacy, right? At the end of the
Mhm.
day, that's what it's all about. And I think, when I talk to people and they say, well, what is this ripple about? Right? I don't understand it. It's like, well, it's about making a difference. And I think every single one of us, like you said, is a ripple. We want to make a difference. It's the difference. What is, if you ask yourself the question, how can I make a difference? Will I make a difference if the opportunity presents itself? And what's the difference that I do want to be known for? What do I want to make? And for all of us, we have that calling and we have that ability. And I think, in today's society, it becomes easy to just focus on what am I going to get out of it? Why is this, useful? Is it beneficial really in the long run? I think if you can show that you have compassion and you have an authentic heart, you will make difference out there in the world. You can, without question, change somebody's life. And I think through the work that you did with Junior Achievement, what you're doing for Garland ISD now, obviously what Mark was doing through his coaching, and just being there, willing to step up to the plate where maybe somebody else isn't, and just contribute, I think is a big factor. And I did not realize at the time, as a young entrepreneur, I was doing everything I could to keep my head above water, and I was very self conscious and very concerned that I would have nothing of value. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And you kept encouraging me along the way, right? I do remember leaving one school one time, and you basically driving me, stopping in an HEB parking lot, and basically telling me to pull my head out of my hindquarters and say, you've got something that they need. Now,
I'm
you can be
sure you're making
selfish and
that up.
stuff.
I really feel certain you're making that up, but
it's,
it
it's
does
not.
sound
Yeah,
like
yeah,
something I
I
would
know.
do.
I
So,
know exactly where you parked. I can tell. I'll take you there next time you're down there. Remember, right here. So
right.
maybe one day they'll erect a plaque to us there. I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't remember what it was. I think you came in to observe or something, and
Yeah.
I was with Miss Dobbs's class, and I think, at the time I was like, I just don't think I'm, doing that great a job. I don't think I'm making that big a difference. And you can't, well, let's come see what you're doing, which made me even more nervous. Right. But at the end of the day, I do remember you specifically saying, you know what you really found was, because I had built things around the program you guys
Mhm.
provided us to make it, in my opinion, a little bit more relevant,
Right,
something I could feel a
right.
little more confident in. And I leveraged my experience, like you said. But I remember you walking out and you're like, I don't understand what your problem is. And I'm like, I just feel like I'm just not doing a great job. And you pulled over and you said, look, you had them engaged in a way that really made a difference. You've
Mhm.
seen other people do it, and you're like, you got the people in the back of the room, and they're on their, they weren't on phones at that point, but
Right.
they're writing notes or passing notes or just not paying attention. And I remember you saying you had them eating out of your palm of your hand, and you just
Mhm.
don't realize the power of that. And
Right.
I have recognized that at the time. And I remember one kid in particular that Miss Dobbs had warned me about, that this kid had just a way of really, being argumentative and causing conflict within the class.
And those are the
And
greatest kids.
uh,
Those are the ones you really
they
wanna
are, they
they
are,
are
and
the
I
greatest kids.
always had, I coached soccer for 28 years. The problem kids were my jam. That was what
Right.
I loved, right? And I remember this kid always sort of making a smart, alecky comment about whatever I'd said or whatever we were doing. And I remember just kind of at one point stopping the class, like she went to make copies or something, right? And I stopped what we were doing and like, hopefully he doesn't, just, this doesn't go wrong. But I said, you have the personality to be somebody who's great in sales. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, because you're so quick witted. I mean, you have a line and a comment for everything, which means your brain works at an operating level that's
Mhm.
higher than a lot, that you don't realize what a skill that is. And you would have thought that was like the one and only time that he had ever been recognized for anything. And he
It was.
just loved junior achievement from that point forward. He wasn't a problem. He always asked questions. He came and he would almost be upset because he had to go to his next class because he wanted to stay and talk to me after class. But those are the victories, right? That you
Right.
really, you strive for, is to really make a difference for those kids that are really trying to figure out their own path in life.
And you can convert that to your business, to a
Absolutely.
leadership. You're going to have that one negative. You're going to have someone that is a smart aleck, is arrogant, is negative, is pick whatever adjective, whatever you want to go with it. And you have to find a way to engage them,
Yep.
make them see their worth, because all of that is because they don't feel worth.
That's
That's
right.
all about lack
That's
of worth.
exactly
That's
right.
all that is.
Defense mechanism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all it is. And you have to be able, and not everyone can be saved. I'm not telling your audience that you can do that, but you have to attempt, just like we in education have to try with all of our power to take that one kid and turn them around, so then you can engage the rest of the class, because that
Exactly.
one can really set the tone for what's going to happen with the rest of the class.
Yep.
And so, same thing goes in business, the same thing. And it really is, and you and I talked about this offline before, it really is about developing relationships
It
and
is.
about engagement. And I
Yep.
told you this story, but it's a true story. I went to
Yep.
visit with a principal when I was with junior achievement in Fort Worth. I went to visit with a principal at an elementary school in a local school district. And I took a young lady who was new into her position, and this meeting with principals was, and recruiting volunteers and training volunteers was going to be her responsibility. So I was doing kind of on the job training,
Sure.
and this principal was on face. She didn't want us there. She didn't want to talk to me. She didn't want to hear anything about what we had to offer her. But even though her superintendent had said, yes, we're going to
Yep.
do this, she didn't want anything to do with it. And I was struggling for the person that has lots of years of experience and can basically talk to a brick wall. I was struggling. And I finally saw this book on her shelf about baseball, and it was about baseball and the history of baseball, and there was another one about baseball in Texas. And I asked her, I said, are you a big baseball fan? She looked at that book and she was like, yeah. And so I started talking about baseball, and I started talking about
That's
the
awesome.
Rangers back in the day, and I started talking about my husband being a high school coach who had he wasn't at the time, but he had been a head baseball coach
Yeah.
and started a program at a district we were in at the time that didn't have baseball. And I told her that I had met Nolan Ryan and talked about that. And I mean, it went from
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Boom. Yes.
it was. I mean, all of a sudden she was engaged. She, loosened up. We talked about the program. We talked about our plan. All of that. And we got outside, and this young lady said, "How in the world did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I thought that was going to be, we were at the very end because I thought that this was not going to work. But I saw that book and I
Yeah.
said, I found a connection. I said, if you're struggling, try to find it, look around the room, see if there's anything that you can see that you could start a conversation with that has nothing to do with what you're there for."
Yep.
So it really is all about, and then actually then later on, I don't know, a couple of months later, she came back and she said, "Oh my gosh, that works." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Finding a net connection." She said, "This principle was almost the same." And she said, she didn't want to talk to me. She didn't want to hear anything about, the program or anything like that. And she said, and I saw these pictures of her and her kids with their schnauzers, and this young lady's mother had schnauzers, and she said, I started talking about dogs and about
Yep.
schnauzers, and she said, and she loosened up, and that was it. She goes, "It really works." And I said, "It does work. It really does work." Not always. Some people are just hard to crack, but
Yeah.
if you can, it's about finding a relationship. And I know that in a lot of your programs, I know that you do some of that. You just get to know people. Some
Yeah.
of your seminars are just get to know people, and you have certain questions that are more about, just getting to know people.
Yeah,
So
that I look for, and I call what you were finding was what I call a connection point, right? That one
mhm,
thing that made that person unique to you and created an opportunity for additional conversation. And
mhm,
I think a lot of times, I'm a big, proponent of folks that want to go into it just for, the simple fact of the activity. You see it in sales, you see it in, business development is what you were doing at that point. Like, hey, we,
yeah,
we need to bring this program into your school, and they were resistant, they weren't on board. It was clear they were trying to put up every roadblock they could, but you found the one thing that really made the difference. And I've found that some of those people that I've encountered in my life, it's the connection point that really made all the difference in the world. I
mhm,
mean,
right,
led me actually to being an entrepreneur. It led me to landing some really successful opportunities for my business. I actually sold a company in 2004 because of a connection point. And so you look at these things, and they seem very insignificant in the moment, and they may
mhm,
seem a bit desperate because you're like looking for anything to grasp a hold of. But the things that people display in their office, the things that people, put on their walls, the things that make that person who they are, oftentimes those are the things that they want so much to be recognized for, but nobody ever asks about.
right,
And
right,
so, the fact that you pick baseball, is certainly it kicks the door wide open for something, and it differentiates you really, and you become memorable to that person. And if you're authentic and you look at the connection point for what it is, if you use that as the follow-up, right, hey, the
right,
Rangers just traded so and so, what do you think
right,
about that? Well, that
right,
gives your next interaction and conversation so much more power and potential.
right. And really, it's anything, and it may not equate to a business transaction right away,
Yep.
and it may never equate to a business transaction. But what it may equate to is another connection point.
Yep.
It may equate to something for someone else, maybe a connection for someone else, to that person that you've developed a relationship with. They trust you. And so in turn, they're going to trust people that you bring to them. So
Absolutely.
again, it's the connection, it's the ripple, it's all the same, and it just continues to flow. And
Yep.
even to this day, I mean, I had a situation where I needed, in my current day position, where I needed to call another school district, and there was one person still in that. I had junior achievement in that program or in that district, and there was one person in the administrative office who's an assistant superintendent that was still there, and I was able to call her and get our situation solved.
That's awesome.
And it was because, I mean, I hadn't talked to her since I left junior achievement in Fort Worth 7 years or nearly 8 years ago.
Yep.
So, and it's just, it comes back, and it
It does.
makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference. And I just, again, I've thought about, since you asked me to do this, I've thought a lot about it. Again, thought like he needs better influences in his life. But I've thought about, I said this to you, it's just what I do. It's
Yeah.
just who I am. It's in my DNA. It's, it just is. And I know that it's not in a lot of people. So I know that people have to work outside their comfort zone to do some of these things. But innately, if you are a person that cares about other people, or you have a passion about certain things, then you can find that within you
Yeah.
to try and make those connections and step out of your comfort zone a little bit, exactly what you did. And isn't it funny though that people think that entrepreneurs are just these, you know, wildly crazy ideas and talk to them, again, a brick wall, anybody. But in reality, you really weren't that person.
They're the most insecure individuals on the planet. Let me just tell you. I don't
You
care
you
how
weren't
successful they are.
you weren't that person.
Yep.
And but you found it, and you found your passion, one of
Yeah.
your passions, because your work now, some of your work now is with school districts, is in education.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's funny because when you and I were talking, and it had been a little while since we had caught up, but you didn't have any clue about my other software company and
Mm-mm.
the passion that I have for schools. And you're like, this is just so ironic that this came
Yeah,
full circle. We started in education, but on the outer edge, now you're at a district. Now I'm working with districts, and we're both trying to make that environment better, because at the end of the
mhm,
day, it goes back to that legacy thing. My team here at Owner Insight on my software company, we're always talking about that. What we're trying to do is, you never know who's going to come out of that school, right? The
right,
next president, the next great CEO, the next world changer comes out of there, and you had a hand in creating the environment to support them, to love them, to encourage them, and to help them be successful, and of course support the team, the teachers, the team behind the teachers, and the administration in that whole community.
right.
There's legacy there, and so
Yeah,
it's a different kind of ripple that we're doing, you and I, today. But it's amazing how closely aligned we still are after all these years.
yeah, it is. It really is. And you know, it's a wonderful thing, and it makes you. Like I said, since we talked, I've reflected a lot on that, and just find it so interesting. And I just thought of this, and you know, do you know that a little bit of information? Do you know that one of the well-known entrepreneurs across the United States was in junior achievement, and he's very well known in
Really?
Dallas. Mark
Who's
Cuban.
this?
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban.
Mark
Oh,
Cuban was
wow.
a junior achievement. He was just like you. I mean, he was in junior achievement. He actually had junior achievement in his classroom.
Yeah.
And it made such an impact, even though you were a volunteer, it made such an impact on you. And yeah, he's
That's
and there
awesome.
are many others, but he's local to me.
Yeah.
So he's and well known across the country. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
And
but he was a junior achievement
that's awesome. Yeah, I had
person.
no idea that that was the
Mhm.
case. Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, like you said, you just never know where that program and the volunteers that help that program continue to get traction to this day, where it may take you, right? And
right.
where who it might influence. And so that's the beautiful aspect. Let me ask you, like, in closing, one final question. I mean, you and I kind of have communicated. It was we had this great conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I was so grateful that you were willing to come on to the podcast, because you are one of the neatest people I have ever met, right? You are true and authentic, and you say it like it is, and that's what I've always loved about you. But in your mind, based on what you know now about what I do with the ripple, what does the ripple effect mean to you?
I I guess, and I didn't know it. I didn't have a name, but I guess it's all the relationships, all the people in my life, whether that's my personal life, whether that's my professional life, whether it's people that come in certain seasons in your life.
Yep.
It's it. it's really what encompasses and makes my life whole. And, I mentioned that my husband had passed away. It'll be 2 years in March. That's been a hard thing. And he battled cancer for 8 years before that. And so it's been a long road.
Yeah.
But the people, and he said to me one day, after he was sick and, kind of towards the end, he goes, Lisa, we have been very, very blessed with all of the people, all aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
And so it really makes your life whole. It makes your life bright. It gives you hope. When you may not have any hope, you have those people that lift you up that are ripples, and they're from all aspects of your life. Again, when you asked me to do this, and people will tell you I've been bragging about it. Now I will tell you that my family and people that I know think you're crazy for asking this strong Texas drawl accent, because your audience in the Northeast is probably not going to be able to understand a word I've said.
They will. It's fine. You're good.
But my family thinks you're crazy. But that impacted me. That was such an honor for you to say what an impact I had and that you wanted me to be on your show. It really was something that I've reflected a lot on, again, our time together, in Austin, and kind of since then, and the reconnection. And like you said, it's like we talked when we talked 2 weeks ago, it's like we had talked the day before. So
yep.
There wasn't anything different. But I just think for me, it makes my life whole, and it brings different aspects and facets and different types of people, different personalities, different, views, and it just makes you a very diverse, well-rounded, for me, person to have all those different ripples and different aspects of in relationships and engagements that I've had. So
well, you've impacted a lot of people. I mean, you've made a big difference in a lot of ways, and continue to do so. And you made a huge difference in my life. I would have to say you're definitely on my list of people that influenced where I ended up coming out with the book and doing what I've done with this concept, mainly because when I first started, I kind of thought I was serving, kind of an underserved, market, which is the more shy, introverted people. And what I've actually found is some of those people you think have all of their, collective, stuff together. They're the most insecure individuals out there, but they're everybody's desperate to connect, because it's through those relationships, through those experiences that we go through with other people. That's the richness of life, right? That's the beautiful parts. And I can tell you, I mean, there's never been a day that doesn't go by that I haven't thought about that time that Junior Achievement presented for me, and you gave me the courage and the opportunity to go forward and do it. And it was the perfect thing for me at that time, which really just springboarded all the way through. And even after you left Austin, I was still volunteering for a while, and
long time.
I enjoyed the process. I ended up back up with little kids, which I found a different way to connect and engage with them. And then, as a dad, just going back in and, being a watchdog dad and participating at the school and doing some of the things that I did, I think Junior Achievement gave me that confidence and courage. Maybe not so much the program, but their coordinator, Lisa Cox, made darn sure that I knew what I was doing and prepared for any environment that would get thrown at me. So
she did. And I would encourage your listeners again to, again, I don't want to go political or anything. I just think that we need a lot of, in this country today, we need people to care about people, or care about something else. And I think that, I would encourage your listeners, and we've talked a lot about education, and obviously that's our passion, yours and mine, and it's our life's work. But find something, a rescue organization for animals, find, something that has to do with the earth and moving forward, so that this world is here for, the next generations,
Yep.
and find something, make a connection, meet somebody new. And
Yep.
I want to leave you with one thing that at my husband's memorial service, it was at the beginning of COVID. He died literally right the week that started the world shutting down. And we had his memorial at a school district, at a school, the school that brought us to Garland ISD. And we had over 200 people at the beginning of the pandemic,
Wow.
which was probably not a smart thing to do, but
Yeah.
I don't think anyone got sick. So, but one of the men who spoke, Mark had made a connection with a man whose name is Kerry Dow. And when Mark was the head coach at a high school here in Garland, and Mark Kerry is African American. He's from the South, grew up in Mississippi. He is a minister by trade, but has now moved into doing work with young men and trying to help make an influence in young men's life. So he and Mark had connected, and they became best friends, and very different backgrounds. Kerry grew up in the South. He's African American. As he said, he saw racism. He's seen racism up close and kissed her on the lips and took her to prom. And Mark, who grew up in a lower income household, but white, different backgrounds, but they came together and were very best friends and had some different views about certain things. And so anyway, at Mark's memorial service, Kerry asked, he said, I challenge all of you to do what Mark and I did, meet somebody today that is different than you. And he did that. He had actually already done it. He did it before Mark's service. He met one of my niece's husband. They live in kind of Northwest Texas. He's a rancher, very different from Kerry, very, very different. And they met and they became friends. And they're just like, they're very different, but he challenged. So I challenge your audience to meet somebody new today. Meet somebody that's different from you. Meet somebody that you wouldn't think you would have anything in common. Just have a short conversation. Just say hello. How are you? It doesn't have to be something, but meet somebody, interact in whatever way you can with somebody that's different from you and that's new to you, and just see where that goes.
Yeah, and pay attention to where that goes and how you
Yeah.
feel about it. That's the
Right.
key, is that when you can attach that emotion to the fact that you took a chance and it was reciprocated back and it wasn't that scary, it is life changing. I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many of those types of connections and relationships I've developed in my life. And man, what a beautiful, beautiful challenge to put forward for everybody that is
Yeah.
going to see this on video or going to hear it on the podcast. So that's awesome, Lisa. I definitely appreciate it. And I would dare to say, why are you not introducing me to Carrie?
Oh, I know.
Hello.
I do need to introduce you to Gary. You're exactly right. And I shall.
We definitely need to make that happen for
We need
sure.
to make that happen. When
Yeah,
you come up this
absolutely.
way, next time you come to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I will absolutely make that happen,
That
because
would be great. I would love that.
he will
Well,
change your life.
There's no doubt. Sounds like that would be a wonderful connection for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in the Ripple Effect podcast. I am your biggest fan, and I'm so grateful that you agreed to do this. And unlike what you said, I don't need better friends. I just need to stay better connected to the friends I have right here. And our
Me too.
friendship is important to me. So we
Me too.
definitely are gonna that in 2022 we are definitely going to finally get together, and we will share some hugs and a meal, and we will reminisce about the old times, and we will plot for what we're going to do with new times.
That's right. That's
Yep,
exactly right. Thank you for
absolutely.
asking me. It was an honor. I hope that I've been able to help one person that may be listening or watching, that one thing that we talked about will make a difference, and will
Absolutely.
at least get them to start thinking.
So I don't know if you're on social media. I know you're on LinkedIn. I don't know if you feel
I
comfortable
am.
sharing that
I
contact
will.
info,
Yeah.
but if somebody wants to reach out and talk to you and learn more about the volunteer experience or what you get from it, or maybe where they can plug in, how might they reach you?
I'm on Facebook. It's Lisa Harris Cox.
Okay.
And I am on Twitter, and I don't know what it is on Twitter.
We'll
It's
find it and put it in the show notes.
okay. We'll do that. I'll find it. I am on Twitter and then LinkedIn. So
Awesome.
but
Well,
it does have my maiden name on Facebook. So
okay, Lisa Harris Cox on Facebook. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure that our listeners will definitely want to reach out and learn more about you because she's an amazing, amazing woman. So you're definitely going to want to know her. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for participating, Lisa. Thanks for being just an amazing guest. And everyone, go out there, do good in the world, make a difference, meet somebody new, and as always, ripple on.